She staggered through the desert, lips cracked, dress torn, leaving a trail of blood in the sand. When a stranger rode out of the haze, she begged him with her last breath, "Please, don't say his name." But what he whispered next would unleash a storm the West had tried to bury forever. The desert dusk bled red as the sun sank, shadows stretching long across the dust road. A woman staggered forward, her dress torn, her lips cracked with thirst. Every step left a faint trail of blood in the sand. She wasn't running anymore. She was simply refusing to fall. Behind her, the sound of hooves had faded, but the echo still haunted her ears. Then came another sound, a rider approaching slow. The woman froze, her body trembling though her eyes still burned fierce. Out of the haze rode a stranger, tall in the saddle, hat brim low, coat dragging dust. His horse was lathered, its sides streaked with sweat. When he dismounted, she recoiled. Don't say his name," she rasped, clutching at her ribs as though the very syllables could shatter her. Her breath caught in her throat. The stranger's voice was rough but calm. "Whose name?" Her eyes blazed with fear and defiance, a storm that refused to break. "If you say it, you'll damn us both." But the man didn't step back. He crouched near her, gloved hand hovering just shy of her shoulder. "You're bleeding bad. Whoever he is, he left scars deeper than these cuts." The woman shook her head, dust streaking her cheeks. "He's not dead. He's never dead. The desert whispers him like a curse. Please, don't say it." The stranger's jaw tightened. He looked past her, scanning the empty horizon. But the silence wasn't safe. It was the kind of silence that held its breath before thunder struck. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The woman flinched as if it carried a message. The stranger's horse stamped nervously, sensing a tension the night itself seemed to carry. "Friend or foe?" he muttered under his breath, though it wasn't clear if he meant the woman, or the one whose name she begged him to keep buried. The wind picked up, swirling grit between them. The woman's eyes lifted to his, wet and unyielding. "If you care to live, you'll walk away. But if you stay, you'll learn the name. And once you do, there's no turning back." The stranger didn't walk away. Instead, he steadied her to his horse and guided her toward the shelter of a dry arroyo. They moved under the bleeding sky, his silence heavy, her every glance haunted. She leaned against him, her breath shallow, until they stopped in the shadow of broken stone. By the firelight he sparked, the truth began to leak from her like water through a cracked canteen. "They'll come for me," she whispered, clutching at her side. "They'll follow the tracks. They always do." The stranger stirred the flames with a stick, watching embers drift. "And when they do, what's the fight about? Gold. Land." She shook her head. From beneath the folds of her dress, she pulled a scrap of paper, edges singed. A letter, half destroyed by flame. Scrawled words barely legible, but the signature at the bottom was missing. Her hand trembled as she pushed it toward him. "It's about a name," she said. "The name that should have stayed buried." The stranger leaned close, eyes narrowing. On the back of the paper, faint but visible, was the imprint of a cattle brand. A circle split by a jagged slash, the kind of mark ranchers put on their herds, but this one carried something darker. "That brand," his voice dipped low. "I've seen it burned into men, not just cattle. Outlaw's mark means dead or death." The woman turned her face away, shame etching her features. "It was my family's once. My blood tied to it." She stopped herself, choking back the name she feared. The night pressed closer, coyotes circling unseen. The stranger's gaze cut sharp. "If that name's tied to this brand, then it's more than a ghost. It's a trail of blood still fresh." She clenched her fists, knuckles white in the firelight. "You don't understand. Speaking it pulls him closer. He'll hear it in the wind." The stranger leaned back, but his eyes did not leave hers. Somewhere out in the darkness, a rider's echo cracked against the silence. She stiffened, her face paling. They weren't alone, and the chase wasn't over. By dawn, their fire was nothing but ash. The stranger saddled his horse, then offered his hand to the woman. She hesitated, but the sound of hooves faint on the horizon made the choice for her. She climbed up behind him, clutching his coat tight as they rode. They pushed hard through the mesquite scrub until the land opened into a basin. The stranger slowed near a dry creek bed, letting the horse drink from the last muddy pool. He reached into his saddlebag and handed her jerky and a canteen. She ate in silence, eyes darting to the hills as though every shadow carried his name. When the stranger finally spoke, his voice was even, but it carried weight. You've run a long way. But a name don't fade just because you whisper it less. Out here in the West, every choice carries a price. And if you've been gripped by this story so far, make sure to subscribe for more tales of love and survival, because the next twist may change everything. The woman blinked at him, puzzled by the odd tone in his words, but before she could answer, he leaned closer. If you want to live, I need the truth. Who branded that letter? Who hunts you? Her eyes filled with something raw, fear, grief, and rage all tangled. She whispered, barely audible, my father. The stranger froze. Her voice cracked as she continued. I thought he was dead. Years ago, the town burned his ranch, said justice had been done. But he crawled back from the ashes. And now he hunts me for the sin of leaving his name behind. The stranger clenched his jaw, staring at the distant ridges. Dust clouds rose there, riders closing in. He tightened the reins, pulling her close. Then you and I are bound tighter than you think. Because I've got a debt with that mark too. Her head snapped toward him, eyes wide. You mean? But the thunder of hooves cut her words short. Dust billowed, riders breaking over the ridge. Rifles glinted in the morning light. And the name she feared most rode on their breath. They reached the skeleton of a ghost town by noon, sun hammering down on the sagging roofs and splintered signs. The stranger led her to the dry well at its center, where the last boards creaked under their boots. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the rustle of wind through empty windows. Then came the riders. 6 men, their coats black with dust, rifles across their saddles. They fanned out in a slow circle, boots thudding against wood, eyes fixed on the pair by the well. One dismounted, a tall man with a scar splitting his cheek, his brand burned into the leather at his chest. The woman clutched the stranger's arm. Don't, she hissed, her voice cracking. Don't say it. The leader spat, boots grinding grit. Ain't no use hiding, girl. Your blood belongs to him. We all ride in his shadow. His eyes cut toward the stranger. And you? Best step away if you don't want to wear the brand too. The stranger's hand hovered over his revolver. But instead of drawing, he whispered, low enough for only her to hear, the name. She gasped, eyes flooding with both horror and release. The word carried weight, like thunder rolling before a storm. And the riders heard it. Their faces shifted from menace to unease, as if even they feared what the name could conjure. One man among them, younger, with a brand still fresh on his wrist, faltered. His gaze locked on the woman, then back to the stranger. He's lying, the youth muttered, though his voice shook. He don't know him. But the stranger didn't flinch. He spoke the name again, louder now, echoing against the hollow storefronts. The leader's lip curled. So you do know? Then you'll die for it. Guns lifted, iron glinting in the brutal sun. The woman's heart thundered in her chest. And in that breathless moment, the young branded man hesitated, then turned his weapon sideways. Not at the stranger, not at the woman, but at his own leader. Friend or foe? Salvation, or a crueler fate? The answer came with the crack of the first shot. The first gunshot shattered the stillness, ricocheting off weather-worn boards. The young rider's bullet tore past his leader's cheek, carving a fresh line across the old scar. Chaos erupted. Horses screamed, boots thundered, rifles cracked like lightning splitting the desert sky. The stranger pulled the woman down behind the well, iron already in his hand. He fired once, twice, each shot precise, each man dropping into the dust. The young defector fought beside him, wild-eyed, as if breaking free of a chain he'd worn too long. But the leader roared, charging through the gunfire, his revolver spitting flame. The stranger met him in the center of the square, steel against steel, fists against bone. The woman watched, torn between terror and awe, as the man who had whispered the cursed name fought like he'd been waiting for this reckoning all his life. Finally, the leader staggered back, smoke curling from his pistol, blood blooming on his shirt. He fell to his knees, eyes burning through the haze. You think killing me kills him? He rasped. That name don't die. It owns you now. The stranger raised his revolver, but the woman caught his wrist. No, she whispered, tears cutting streaks through the dust on her face. If you kill him, the name binds you too. End it with mercy, or it never ends. For a moment, the stranger's eyes were fire and storm. Then he lowered his weapon. The leader collapsed into the dirt, breath fading, curse swallowed by silence. The ghost town held still, smoke drifting like ghosts between broken beams. The young branded rider dropped his gun, shoulders shaking. "You gave me back my life," he muttered. The woman clung to the stranger's arm. Her voice trembled, but her eyes carried steel. "You spoke his name, and yet you broke it." He looked at her, the desert wind tugging at his coat. "No, you broke it, by not letting it chain me, too." The sun dipped lower, casting gold across the ruins. Their shadows stretched long, no longer chased by the curse of a name, but by the weight of choices made. And out here in the Wild West, names were carved into dust. But courage could outlast them all. If her stand stirred something inside you, the voice of the story echoed, "Don't just leave this tale behind." Like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because out here in the Wild West, love may be scarcer than water, but it always finds a way.